on the sidewalk from someone's driveway and just like going through that little gate on the off the sidewalk. And I think the ramp that I saw on the plan looks really great, but also there's no, I don't know how I would exit from there, like back onto the street to go the opposite way. Yeah, that's it.
Great, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Bob Leidy. I live in Ward 6, and I bike here often, and I love the South Burlington trails, and it's very, getting to Market 32 is tough from my side of the road. So would love to have this done. I'm a little curious as to why it ends at Pine Street and doesn't go all the way to the Champlain Parkway, which then connects to the South Burlington Trail that goes all the way down to the bike path, which would be nice and safe. And the other thing the only unsafe thing is on the South Burlington side, where the Walgreen parking lot has 3 entrances, and one of them's right at the intersection, and sometimes you see cars at a 90-degree angle from that's blocking everything, and it's crazy. I don't know why they need 3 accesses from that one parking lot. Just close that down. That would be great.
Great, thank you.
My name's Robert. I'm a resident. I live on Home Avenue. I think it's Ward 5. You want to keep up with that. I want to take the chance to address the commission directly. Having worked in government for many years, I know that for many reasons, government agencies tend to want to expand the scope of their projects and responsibilities, and I'm hoping the commission will take a different eye and view towards things. I think for 3 main reasons this project it's not the right time for this project. First, we're under a lot of tax stress, extremely high tax stress, probably unsustainable, and anything that the city can do to defer payments is probably a good idea. Even if this money has already been allocated, money is fungible, budgets can be adjusted. I don't think this project is necessary right now. I don't think it's a safety necessity. It'll help with safety, but there's parallel roads nearby for any bikers who feel it is critically unsafe to drive on Home Avenue. There's nearby parallel roads that don't really facilitate through traffic that are generally empty of cars. I don't think it's a climate necessity because most biking is recreational. It doesn't really reduce carbon emissions, and whatever carbon reduction biking these bike paths would enable would take years to offset the construction carbon cost, and that doesn't even take into account traffic, which is the biggest concern I have. Since Lake Champlain Parkway opened up to Home Avenue, traffic has greatly increased on Home Avenue. I've seen traffic backed up almost all the way to Pine Street from Shelburne. And putting in this construction will make that problem much worse. So you'll have to have road closures and things like that. And with people already being harassed and having to take a lot of time sitting in this traffic to get back to their families and do other things, I think it'd be best to wait until Lake Champlain Parkway is complete all the way to I-89 before we undertake this project and additional construction. Once Champlain Parkway is complete, the traffic should drop considerably, making it a lot easier to do this. So for fiscal responsibility, climate responsibility, and for reducing traffic troubles that people in the area have to deal with, I request that you defer this project at least until Lake Champlain Parkway is complete. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jack Evans, also speaking on the Home Ave bike lanes. As a lifelong Ward 6 resident who does a lot of my shopping in City Market, Market 32 in the South End, and who has had to commute often at odd hours working in restaurants, so getting out at midnight, 1 a.m., having a dedicated space to be able to bike at night, especially on such a major road that brings you to a intersection with Shelburne Road and Home Ave or Farrell. This is kind of necessary safety infrastructure, and it sets the city up for the eventual Shelburne Road and Home Ave improvements, because there are lower stress side streets, but once you get to Shelburne Road from there, you're really thrown out, nowhere else to go. So you'd kind of have to go back to that intersection, and at that point, that's more interactions with cars, that's a more circuitous route, and this is just a more direct, straightforward improvement.
Great, thank you.
Hello, I'm Jack Tiano. I live in Ward 5. Also speaking on the Home Ave bike lanes. I guess I'm speaking in support. I'm excited to kind of come back here to speak in support of bike lanes. I feel like there was one more, but the last one I can remember was, I think, at the beginning of 2023 for North Winooski. And I guess what I want to kind of touch on is how I wish I was here more often to do this kind of thing. I look at the city's transportation mode share goals that we set with the walk bike plan in 2017, 2018 to reduce single occupancy vehicles to 37% of commuting mode share and increase our walk bike transit, and how largely biking has held, I think, exactly steady. It's maybe up 1/10 of a percentage point, but everything else is going down. And so I just kind of want to bring the attention of the urgency of the climate crisis, shifting or making viable alternatives to driving is probably one of the biggest impact things that we can do as a city and as a state. Transportation emissions are our biggest sector of emissions, both in Burlington and as the state of Vermont. And it's also one of the sectors that we're making the least progress on. There's no way to equitably reduce the amount of cars on the road without giving people real viable alternatives. And I think this is a really good step in the a really good step in the right direction. But it's also like a really easy decision. Home Ave is, I think it's 13-foot lanes with a 4-foot median that's not really usable. So visually, these are 15-foot lanes. There's no real actual utility for parking on these lanes as it is. And so it's really just taking an easy striping job to make it safer, yes. But there's really not a loss here. It's a win nothing, right? Like there's no compromise. And so to just kind of, again, bring that to the forefront too, and keep in mind that, these kinds of projects are helpful, but we need to be pushing more on the ones where there's more of a compromise that has to be made and kind of live out our values that we've set as a city. Even outside of the mode share goals, there's our 2030 net zero energy plan, which we've set out for ourselves, which is aggressive but necessary as a city, which as part of that is to reduce our ground transportation emissions to zero. And again, without without drastically improving the alternatives to driving, which includes electrification, which includes public transit, but walking and cycling for those majority of trips that are under 2 to 3 miles, or especially 1 mile, is critical. So just framing this a lot in the big picture perspective. This is a good thing. I support it. Love to see more. I'd love to be back here several times a year speaking in favor of projects like this and projects that go further. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I think you're up, Jason.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jason Van Drysch, Ward 5 resident, and year-round biker, walker, and driver in the city of Burlington. I'm also here to urge you to move ahead without delay with the Home Ave Bike Lanes project. I remember pushing for this project, I think, well over a decade ago, so it is long overdue, and it's time to make it happen. One clarification that I'm sure you all know, but just for the record, so it's said out loud, I don't think this would remotely be classified as a construction project. This is a minor grinding and restriping. There's no moving of curbs. Is that correct? So this is a minor project from a budget and inconvenience perspective, and a major project from a safety perspective. I'm delighted to see it on the agenda and would love to see it move forward without delay. One other quick thing, I know that there has been a request to the department to add stop signs on the ends of the three streets that butt into Locust Street and the three or however many who butt into Birchcliff. I urge you not to approve those requests. I live at the intersection of Caroline and Locust, and it is very clear from living there that there is no safety issue crossing the mouth of Caroline. The safety issue is getting across Locust Street itself. And that was supposed to be fixed by the speed tables that went in several years ago, and it didn't do the job. So putting in stop signs on the side streets, frankly, is pointless. And given all of the demands on the department's time, I would encourage you not to add this small but really pretty useless project to the list. Those are entirely safe crossings as they are, and there are so many higher priorities in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like no one else in person. Let's go to online for public comment.
Sharon Busher, you are up in queue.
Hi, good evening. I wanted to, first off, I spoke at City Council, but it was a very long public forum, and I wasn't sure if the director, the DPW director, was there, but I wanted the commission and the director to hear this. I wanted to thank and acknowledge all the work that Megan Moyer has put in to trying to reduce the $200 million wastewater bond. And I know this is incredibly difficult to try to reduce that number. And I wanted to acknowledge and appreciate the work she's done. I still find the resulting bond more than I think I'm going to be able to afford. So I'm pretty worried about it, but not to acknowledge all that work would be wrong. And so I wanted to make sure that the director and Megan and the commission knows that the public appreciates everything that's being done. So that's number one. Number two is on East Ave, the traffic calming portion of your agenda talks about what's been accomplished and evaluates the success or the result. And my question is not tonight, but in some way to get back to me, if you would, on East Avenue, where is that speed being measured? Is it before or after the crosswalk at Billadu? I think it's relevant, and so I wanted to find out and then either give feedback to say maybe I'd like to see, or maybe the residents would like to see it moved and check the speed at a different point. But that's the second thing. And then the third thing has to do with the incentive that you're doing on your agenda to attract new businesses with a reduced or 6-month discount in the garages. And I don't know why 6 months, well, I can imagine why 6 months versus a year, but I wondered if the department and the commission have looked at the cost difference. I'm wondering if 6 months is going to be enough to attract a new business. And then I also wondered, and this would be for the director and the DPW staff, I also wondered if indeed you got a new business that had a group of employees, if after that 6 months, there could be a process that would allow those individuals, that business, to negotiate a reduced price for a continued period of time. I'm very concerned about our downtown. I'm very concerned about the viability of Burlington and not having all the taxes have to be generated from residents. I really am concerned that we're losing our downtown businesses. And so this is why I'm asking these questions and asking for consideration. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I hope all of you have a really great holidays. Thanks again.
Thank you, Sharon.
Evan Gould, you're up in queue.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to speak, I'm also resident of Ward 5. I wanted to speak in support of the Home Avenue bike lanes. My mom, I think, also sent in messages, but she lives on Home Avenue. And I regularly use my cargo bike since we have one car to drop off my son at her if she's watching him. And I also frequently use it to shop at Market 32. And without the curb cut that's would be installed, I have to either jump the curb with my cargo bike and then make a left turn across sometimes pretty extraordinary traffic, or bike down into somebody's driveway on a pretty rough sidewalk with bouncing groceries. So I think it's a very valuable project. And I've also had issues with kind of people speeding and not paying attention to me or cutting very close to me on that road. So I can see safety improvements being valuable. And I'll also echo Jack's sentiment about I'd love to be here more often to talk more about these kinds of projects. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And that's all we have online, Chair.
Great, thank you. So moving on to the consent agenda. I know we have some communication from Vice Chair Fox on some additions to the minutes. Those were all distributed by Rob. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda with the additions that
I'll
Vice
make
Chair Fox.
a motion to approve the consent agenda with the additions from Commissioner Fox about last month's meeting notes, November's meeting notes.
Great. Looking for a second.
Sorry, I don't know about the procedural issue.
We'll go to discussion right after, so if we do a second and then we can discuss.
Discussing the agenda, or the consent agenda items
Correct.
as well? Okay, thanks.
Are you seconding the?
Yeah,
motion?
sure.
Great,
Yep.
excellent. So discussion, Commissioner Davis?
Three, I think, quick things with the ADA spaces. I was wondering if these should actually be provided more frequently on a temporary basis for people like pregnant women or people that are injured. Other issues that may already be being done, but I could see that being a benefit to many people. The stop signs with the intersections, I am wondering why there were no stop signs at the intersections in the first place. I find it odd that there weren't. So, I'm not used to situations where there would not be a stop sign at an intersection like that. And then the third thing was with the Lake Street loading zone. I was wondering, I suspect this has already been looked into, but that loading zone being at the intersection of, currently at the intersection of, I'm not sure what, Side Street with Lake Street. No, the.
Going into the parking lot?
Where it currently is, yeah, I think going into the parking lot.
Yeah.
I was wondering if by being unoccupied at night, if that actually made it easier to turn for people kind of navigating in and out of that parking lot. So basically just meaning there might have been some benefit that might not be quantified currently to where it was or is. And then secondly, would the new location create more congestion at the Lakeside and Lake Street and College Street intersection with people turning onto it if a truck has to like approach the space and back into it, or loading and unloading something from the back of the truck? So that is what I had on the consent agenda.
Would the department like to answer any of the
Yeah,
questions?
why don't I have the technical team come up to provide a quick update?
Okay, so I guess we'd start with the accessible parking spaces. I mean, there are permits that you can get for temporary situations, an obstruction permit or other situations, but if someone needs an accessible space, You know, we process those requests as they come. What was the other thing that you?
The stop signs.
Right. To be honest with you, I'm not sure why there are no stop signs there. We put in stop bars. And it just makes sense. And obviously, we talk about it in the memos. The METCD has pretty clear guidelines. I mean, we have situations like that all over the city, and we address them when we can. So I think that's the best way to talk about that. As far as the Lake Street loading zone, what's happening right now essentially is trucks are blocking the street right in front of the entrance. And so it's kind of a dual reason why we're moving the loading zone. The loading zone currently is not near a driveway, it's next to a crosswalk. And it's actually not really being used because it's so far away from the building and from the entrance. And so we want it to be right in front of the entrance. It's not necessarily an accessible space, but there are several folks that have accessibility needs that just need to be dropped off in front of the building. So part of it's a good vehicle loading zone position because there's the door, and it's also good for accessibility folks. Christina did a good job drawing up some ramps, and we're gonna put in some ramps in the spring. So does that address that?
Okay, yeah, awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Other questions?
I think that was it. There was a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Let's vote on the consent agenda. Thank you, Philip. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye for myself. There's no nays. We will move on to number 5, home ave, bike lanes, and parking removal.
Excellent. So, hello, everybody. I'm Julia Ursaki, Public Works Engineer. We've already heard a lot tonight about the home ave bike lane, so I won't talk for too long, and we can get to your questions. These bike lanes are a recommendation from Plan BTV Walk Bike. They connect the Pine Street bike lanes to the South Burlington Rec Path and Greater Network in South Burlington. They improve connectivity into the Market 32 Plaza with their ramp. And it also has a lot of synergy and is in support of our intersection study of the Shelburne Street, Home Ave, Farrell Street intersection, which several of the recommendations include or involve making the crossing of Shelburne Street safer. So that's implementing an exclusive pedestrian phase. There are several recommendations for South Burlington on Farrell Street, which they have an upcoming paving project, I think, in the 2026 timeframe, where they plan to address some of the access management issues and make improvements on Farrell. So we really see this as the right time to make the improvements on Home Ave. It is more of a minor type of project, not a big construction project with major traffic control impacts. And we cannot go all the way to the Champlain Parkway at this time because the section of Home Ave to the east, right immediately east of the Parkway, is part of that project area. And we're not allowed to make changes to the Parkway's project area until the whole thing is done and wrapped up.
Thank you.
Yes.
Let's go to any questions from commissioners. Commissioner Barr?
I have no questions. I was a part of the public, or the project,
for
the PAC.
Yeah.
Project
Shelburne
advisory,
Home.
so
Great.
I'm well familiar with it. Thank you for a great job.
Commissioner Davis?
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to say that I support it. I drive on Home Avenue very often, living in the Lakeside neighborhood here, taking the route that I'm sure many people do, the Parkway to the to Home Ave and then onto Shelburne Road to get onto I-89. I noticed in the memo it mentions that people rarely park on that section because there's not enough room with the median, but I've definitely seen people park there and then there just is no room and you're either driving on a median or you're going into the other side of the street, which has been very bizarre to me, so I'm happy to have that changed. One other thing I wanted to note was that because of the frequency that people are using the right turn lane coming out of Home Avenue onto Shelburne Road, it actually makes the issue with bikers that are hugging the right side of the lane more severe as it currently is, because people are naturally going to want to use that right lane and might kind of like go over a little bit and come back over to the right lane, and other things like that. So just driving it frequently, I very much agree with the department's efforts there, so thank you.
Commissioner O'Neill-Lamarco?
You mentioned about the Champlain Parkway, and that's also come up in comments. Is the plan then to connect to the Champlain Parkway at some point? And
That's a hope. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but we are thinking about connectivity in general throughout the south end, so looking at where there are parallel routes, what other infrastructure. We have our Queen City Park Road shared use path under construction, so we're thinking about it. We're just not ready to do that yet.
okay, I mean, my hope is always for connected networks instead of, you know, you're on the bunny trail and all of a sudden you go into the like double black diamonds.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, we have been internally talking about what the connected bike network grid is in the south end, and we have some ideas that are just the very preliminary stages that would, I think, even expand the network to vulnerable users even better. So we need to do a little bit more work, but yes, connectivity is critical.
Okay. We'll be back with more on that. Thank you.
Vice Chair Fox?
I don't have any questions. You answered the one that I had, so yeah, I'm supportive of this. I think that's it.
Great. I only had two very quick questions. One was around, and I feel like I should know the answer to this, is around sort of not having a bike box at Home and Shelburne Street. I'm just curious. I know that was, I think, a part of the discussion when looking at sort of the whole intersection and what the decision was to not go with that
Yes.
in this project.
So if you look at the concept plan, once we actually get to the intersection of Shelburne Street, there is an westbound bike lane. So like the receiving lane of Home Ave has a bike lane.
Right.
The approach has transitions to a Sharrow that's in the through lane, not the right lane. And then there's also the ramp onto the sidewalk for people who don't feel comfortable taking the lane.
I do, yes. This rings a bell.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing, there's not really much right now. I just wanted to point out, I think it is on there on the diagrams, but both in the receiving lane, heading westbound on Home Ave, just with the alignment of the curbing, you know, the little area where it's sort of hashed out for where the curb lane changes. I just want to note that, you know, potentially could be a safety conflict point, and I don't know what could be done in the future, particularly in the summertime, just if somebody's biking and they're sort of not fully in the travel lane yet and a car is sort of coming at that same area.
Yep.
Potential conflict point, but just wanted to highlight it.
Chair, I realized I
Yes.
had another
go ahead.
question. Will there be signage associated with the lane delineation as well?
Yes.
Or meaning like an actual sign, not pavement markings?
Yes. Bike
Okay.
lanes, yes.
I find that intersection in particular, it's often an issue. When I first moved here, I had no idea which lane was the lane that went straight, for instance, because the arrow's basically entirely rubbed off, and especially if it's snowing or there's any sort of anything else going on, or it's nighttime, it's really hard to see. So one thing I'm going to mention later is kind of trying to do that for more places, but I think the fact that that's happening here already because of the bike lane is great, so I'm excited to hear that.
We weren't necessarily planning to put that sign out,
Oh,
but we
okay.
certainly can.
Yeah.
So that was a good.
Yeah.
I was, agree.
Great. Let's go to any public comments on this agenda item. If folks have additional comments beyond maybe what was said earlier, we can start in person if anyone here has anything additional. Rob, anyone online for public comments for this?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. There was a draft motion in the memo.
So motion to approve?
Great, a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye for myself, no nays. It is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 6, traffic calming program update.
Yes, I have a presentation. And join as a panelist. Awesome. Okay. All right, I will keep my remarks brief so we can kind of get into the discussion. So this is an update on the traffic calming program. It's also just kind of like a re-education for everybody on the process and what we do. So we're going to talk about the new traffic calming map. We have a new whiz-bang ArcGIS tool where you can go in and look at projects, and I think you all have that link. Kind of what our methods are for prioritization, some key project updates, and some recent traffic data from those projects. So currently, as of November 25th when I wrote this, there are 62 unresolved traffic calming requests. We all kind of know about this. We have 26 that are qualified, possibly a 27th one, but I'm not fully sure about that, so that's not fully baked to discuss yet. And so kind of what is our process? We get a request. It used to be traffic calming was, you know, you're in line, the next person in line, because, you know, but not anymore. We triage each request. We get the request and see what data do we have for speed, for crashes, traffic volume, truck traffic, and then there's also other anecdotal data that comes along with each project. And then we say, okay, well, we need to collect some data. So sometimes CCRPC helps out with that, and oftentimes we do it. What's the criteria? The 85th percentile speed, crash data, pedestrian bicycle activity. And if criteria is met, then we proceed with some kind of a project. If it's not, then the request gets closed out and we revisit in 5 years, conditions change. So that's kind of the process that we use to evaluate. So just talk about some funding challenges. So we have done some quick build solutions, some low cost rapid measures like the rubber speed humps, the pedestrian zone on Stanbury. But we also, we really want more traditional construction because that's where you really get effective traffic calming that lasts throughout the year. So that's kind of, you know, where we're at, and we'll talk more about funding challenges. So the traffic calming map, which I'll pull up after I give the presentation, is a great tool. We're having some issues updating some of the data, but there's some bugs that need to be worked out, but we have it published, people can look at it, the public can look at it, and it's our way of being very transparent. Some key projects, some upcoming projects. We have the Ethan Allen Parkway traffic calming project. We secured $75,000 bike ped grant through VTrans. We also have funds that have already been allocated and set aside, so we're not looking to secure more funds. But we're also looking at other low-cost projects, Hungerford Terrace and Rose Street. We're looking to do parking chicanes for speed reduction. We've found that the parking chicanes have been pretty successful in reducing speed. But we're also, hopefully, we can get our act together, looking to apply for a TAP grant for Rose. Rose Street would be curb extensions and also some stormwater features.
Well, it's actually for Cedar Street.
It's actually for
But it
Cedar.
intersects.
Okay, well.
Where the existing planters are.
Listen to Julia. She knows exactly what's going on. Some other key projects, recently constructed projects, Brighton Chase parking chicanes have shown some effective speed reduction. Birchcliff Parkway, good raised crosswalks, curb extensions, drainage, some lighting improvements, East Ave, raised crosswalks and concrete chicanes. I heard Sharon Busher's comment earlier about where we collected that data, and we'll have to touch base with her. I'm actually not quite sure where yeah, we'll get back to her on that one. Another project that's going to be coming up next spring is the Old North End Greenway, which has a grant attached to it, and that will be part of our sidewalk contract next spring. So a little look at the data. As you can see, on Birchcliff, Bright, Chase, and East Avenue, we've seen some decent speed reduction. Chase Street and East Ave are still above 25 miles per hour, but there is a good speed reduction there, 33 to 28, 33 to 27. Bright Street, 23 to 19, Birchcliff, 28 to 24. And not really a change in the AADT, the vehicles per day. So, some conclusions. We've had some effective projects. We kind of know some tools that we have and some things that we can do. Some key achievements. Parking chicanes have actually proven to be pretty successful and used in the right conditions. Hungerford Terrace is one that we're looking at. And Ethan Allen Parkway being integrated into the CY25 paving as an add-alt, and the rubber speed humps. Kind of one thing that's a little bit concerning for us is future funding. The town meeting day vote for the $20 million capital bond is going to be very helpful for us to not even really increase, but maintain our initiatives and to keep some momentum going. So we're expecting to get $1.5 million of that. Sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not. So we're hopeful that this will pass. And yeah, that's it. Get into some questions.
Great, thank you. Commissioner comments on this item. Let's start with Commissioner O'Neill Babanco.
Sure. So the future funding, this is always one of those like,
yes.
I think we all want to put our proverbial foot on the proverbial bike pedal to
right.
move things along faster. But as we move things along faster in Plan BTV, we also need to make sure that we have access to funding to maintain any of these infrastructure changes.
Yes.
How is that calculated in, sorry, I'll check out the speaker. How is that calculated in, you know, when we're coming up
Our
with
budget?
a project, right? And then what are those, how are those costs kind of factored into, you know, potential line items for operations and maintenance?
Yeah, we do have money budgeted specifically for that. And, you know, it's a pretty robust amount. I forget what our numbers are, but we do have funding budgeted for that. I will say that if we don't get the bond vote, then, you know, some of that's going to, you know, everything's going to go down in terms of our projects and what we can do and what we can maintain. I will say that maintaining a lot of this infrastructure is, yeah, it can be a little bit of a blind spot for us. That's why we're looking at more low-cost solutions, like these parking chicanes are proving to be very successful, and that's, you know, there's not a whole lot, and it's some signs, you know, that's basically what it is. So, but that's a good thing for us to keep on our minds, keep it on the radar.
Right, and then so thinking about the parking chicanes
Yes.
and thinking about maybe bike lanes.
Right.
I know this has come up in other conversations, other locations, and I'm sure there's specific applications, but thinking about having the floating car park lane be the protection between a bike lane and vehicular traffic as something that requires just paint on the street as opposed to like bollards that then get plowed through, hit. What are applications for that, thinking about a protected bike lane?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting, intriguing solution. I would be a little concerned about how people park. You know, people aren't the best drivers or parkers.
I recognize that, but it's used in other
I think it's an
small
intriguing
cities and urban areas, just something at least to consider for the low cost.
Right. I think one of the pieces, we looked at this and installed a pilot on North Winooski Avenue as part of Plan BTV walk bike. And the challenge ultimately is our narrow rights of way. When we bring parking far out to the street, turning radius really gets compromised. And the fire department told us that trying to go up a one-way street with very little buffer then to get around cars in the travel lane wasn't working for them. We can look at places where we have wider rights of way, but I've seen these applications in areas that have much wider streets than we do, where you can bring the cars out from the curb and still accommodate turning movements.
Okay.
But
I mean,
we can look at that.
thank you for that, because
Yeah.
I feel like I might need to be reminded again when I ask you that question for the 500th time.
It's news to me.
And I guess, one more thing, which I was going to bring up in commissioner comments, but maybe I'll bring it up now because it fits. Thinking about the traffic calming and, the low cost, sort of the quick builds, which are great. I think about the speed along Pine Street and, just on kind of my experience as walker, biker, car rider, mom. I love it because those speed tables are fantastic, and I think, based on just my perception, that you can maintain. And I was watching Jim Barr drive tonight.
How fast were you?
I was watching your speed limit.
I'm always under. I lead a parade.
It's easier
I
to
love people.
maintain a steady speed limit on Pine Street, and I'm going to compare it to Prospect, which has those very aggressive, just the ladies and I were talking the other night, and there were comments about the speed humps, bumps, whatever they're on Prospect Street, which, and I go on that street at least twice a day, back and forth, sometimes more. And you speed up, and then you go over the aggressive hump, and then you slow down, and then you speed up. So thinking about the temporary builds, how to use them as like a test case, and then look at what are the applications that will really slow down traffic, and how do we get to those applications? That's a little bit more predictive, but do you have that capability?
I mean, we know that the rubber speed humps that we used last summer are effective. We talked about last month. We know that those reduce speeds, and people are like, my springs are going to fall off the car. Good, slows you down. But we also know that they're noisy. So it's this delicate balancing act of, all right, I know that this works, so we're going to try something else. I mean, we will use those rubber speed humps again, but we probably won't use them on arterials or main thoroughfares.
Okay.
I mean, we're going to test other rubber speed humps. I think our associate engineer Calvin is looking into that. Going to be looking into it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
That's all.
Great. Commissioner Davis.
What was I? In terms of the data for the how many cars per day, that I think was in the table on the second to last slide.
Yep.
During what time periods is that data collected? I'm curious about things like seasonality or other traffic changes that kind of redirect people.
Well, they're 24 hours a day for sometimes a week, sometimes 5 days, and it's usually. I'm not sure the dates perfectly. I think Birchcliff was pretty recent in November. Not quite sure when Bright Street was. East Ave was fairly recent. They weren't put in during snowstorms. They weren't put in during uncommon time periods of the year. We try and avoid collecting speed data during the summertime because college students aren't here. So we try and pick, somewhere in the fall, somewhere in the spring, in general.
And is it measured like the week before and the week after, for instance, just to give a vague idea?
Usually,
Can I add
yeah, go ahead.
context?
Go
So
through
we
it.
do use seasonal adjustment factors, which are published
Yes.
by day and month, I think, by VTrans. So they take all of the continuous traffic counter data that they have statewide and basically give you a factor to adjust your volume on the specific day and month to a more average kind of normal volume that is reasonable to compare. So that helps us be able to do counts at different times and feel like we're comparing apples to apples.
Okay, awesome. I didn't know about that. That's very cool. I'm going to have
VTrans Red
to
Book,
look that up.
look it up.
Yeah. Julia does this stuff. I'm just here.
The other question I had, following up on what Commissioner O'Neill Vivanco said, was with the maintenance budgets. I've heard of other jurisdictions that did not plan anything for their maintenance of things like bike lanes, that sort of thing. And now that is a huge issue. So I was curious if there's a budget process that's like 10% of the budget of the thing, of making the thing, is retained or factored in to be maintenance in the future? Is there like a yearly allocation? Is there, and I don't want to put more, or I don't want us to put more like pressure on removing
Sure.
flexibility,
Sure.
but I just was curious if there was a process.
Julie's going to have a great explanation, but just to get into budgeting real quick, for transportation, we're not like street capital where there's like a tax and there's a set amount of money and we know how much money we're going to get every year. We're based on bonds, right? How much the citizens are willing to say, okay, you're going to get some more money to do your work. So we don't have like a set tax rate, so it's really hard for us to sit down and be like, all right, what's our budget going to be different than like paving street capital?
Yeah, and I just want to add, a lot of our funding sources for capital projects don't allow you to use any of the money for maintenance. So
Grants.
it's grants, for example, our transportation capital bond money is not allowed to be used for maintenance. So it's definitely an issue we think about a lot. It's not stopped us from trying to implement things, but we certainly talk to our streets team and our traffic team about maintenance all the time. It's a reason that you don't see a lot of flex posts separating our bike lanes from traffic. So it's certainly something we're thinking about all the time, and we'll try to find more funding for it.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a great conversation. We struggle with maintenance, and we've talked before about this with our protected bike lanes. For FY26, one of the budget concepts I'm playing with is trying to reduce the number of services that we offer and be able to focus more on street maintenance. Because at the end of the day, I think we all can identify items that are out in our public rights of way that we are not adequately maintaining. We look at granite bollards along Riverside Avenue or up along Main Street where that project was, or street furniture on great streets that we're installing. We're really installing high levels of finish downtown. We need to be able to better maintain that stuff. So to your point, yes, we think about it. We don't have a dedicated way of taking 10% of a project cost and putting it into maintenance. The maintenance funding largely comes from property tax. Capital money usually comes from grants. So we collectively need to figure out, how do we take the precious property tax funding that we get and try to get as much of it into the day-to-day maintenance that grants are never going to pay for? That is our collective challenge, and I'm happy to talk more about this sometime later, but you've hit a key constraint.
Okay, awesome, thank you. That explains a whole lot, the grant situation. Now I have a little bit more sympathy for the other places that have issues with maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Great. Commissioner Moore?
Sure, thanks. I think that the traffic calming measures that you've implemented have been great, especially the low-cost ones. The parking chicanes on Chase Street, for instance, have really worked well. But I will caution that it's when it's busy. When it's not busy and there's only one car going,
Sure.
they tend to go a little bit faster. And we see them speeding by there too. But overall, and I'm also a fan of the rubber speed humps. I really am, because I think that it's slowed. Maybe if we move them next year, hopefully we're going to re-implement in some of these areas again. And if we moved them a little bit further down the street, maybe that might be a great thing. But otherwise, I think great job. Thanks.
Vice Chair Fox?
Okay. Whatever. So I really like this, the map, but I guess I'm wondering, like is this relationship with C-Click Fix? And in our memo, it said something about like when a request gets closed if we find it's not warranted, right? And so I'm wondering what the communication is with that person that submits the C-Click Fix is like. So, two things there, yeah.
Right. Well, the traffic calming projects are pretty long-term projects, so there's not a ton of updates on C-Click Fix necessarily. And most of the time when we're talking to folks, we're just talking to them, emailing, phone calls. And the traffic calming map is actually linked to a spreadsheet that we have. It's not linked to C-Click-Fix.
Yeah, and I understand that. I guess I'm just wondering, like, they're two different maps now, right? That are showing different but related information.
Right.
And so,
Well,
yeah.
I think C-Click-Fix is more for reporting the issue. It's the intake, and this is, we've kind of synthesized it, that's my word of the day, and Chapin knows, and kind of have, this is our output now, so we've taken the data in from C-Click-Fix, we've looked at requests, collected data, and now we're putting this back out into the world. So they're distinct in that way.
Yeah, we couldn't do this on C-Click-Fix. I mean, this map, it's great. You can click on these different nodes and actually see photographs of the different traffic calming features. So it's really a good way for us to be able to look at what do we have over here. You know, I can't quite remember. And it was a great tool in terms of asset management.
Commissioner Fox, I think if I understood one of your questions too, just to put a fine point on it, that if we're not accepting, the traffic calming request does not meet a threshold, the requester is getting communicated and not just seeing, you know, something evaporate.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's sort of what I was looking for. Yeah, just thinking about, like, I don't know, the points in C-Click-Fix that just say this request is open and it's been open since like 2021, like, yeah, just stuff like that, and just making sure we're like closing the loops that we can.
Yes, we're definitely closing the loops. And, you know, these traffic calming projects, it's not like a stop sign or an accessible space, which are pretty open and shut. They're long-term, they're costly, and just takes time.
Yep. Okay. I think those were the only questions I had on this. Yeah.
I guess I really like the map. I spent all day looking at maps, so this is great.
Welcome to the club.
Two sort of small comments on the map itself. The dots, the points, talk about the existing infrastructure that was sort of been that's out there. But I think it's hard if somebody isn't as familiar with the map or what has happened in that particular neighborhood. Like, if it's possible in the underway, or either in the underway or completed, sort of a description of what happened there, because it doesn't necessarily, you don't know if like that dot there is related to a project that was completed under this sort of process. So that's one piece. Even if it's something small, like speed tables on this was part of that completed project, just so folks can sort of see the department going from beginning to end. I think that'd be good for as folks are looking at this.
Yeah, we have talked about, you know, providing links to different projects.
Something just to give a little more context, so folks see that, you know, the department is sort of going through with all these requests and moving forward with that. I think would be great.
Great.
What was the other piece? I don't know if it falls within the framework here or if this is sort of part of the traffic calming manual. I know in previous conversations around this, we've talked about equity of projects across the city and trying as best not to have it sort of in one particular neighborhood. And I'm curious if you could just address that, how, you know, the department talks about that and decides that when going from, oh yes, it's met the criteria, to let's find the funding and we get the funding and now we're going to do it. That piece.
Yes, I mean, I think this map is a huge step in us being able to make those choices. We definitely, that's a major factor when we're talking about new projects. We just did one on East Ave, a major traffic calming project, and so we picked one that also has a high need, and the speed shows it's necessary, and the crash history and the pedestrian activity, but we very intentionally picked one in the new North End in a different area of town that hasn't had a traffic calming project as recently. The Ethan Allen Parkway project that Philip was talking about, so.
And Rose and Cedar, it's in the heart of the old North End. That's a project that we're looking at next year.
From a policy perspective, I think the important points are the barrier to entry before used to be having to get a whole bunch of neighbors to sign on. we reduced the barrier to entry to make it easier for a person who doesn't have time to just submit a request. Secondly, the eligibility is not first in, first out anymore. The eligibility is based on data. So we're not discounting or listening to a cranky wheel more than a non-cranky wheel. If there is a 8 or 10 mile an hour discrepancy between the 85th percentile and the speed limit, we're prioritizing that project. So I'm hoping that these changes to a more data-driven approach and a lower barrier to entry are giving a higher equity focus to our work.
Great, thank you, I appreciate the context. The last piece was just around, once projects are in, you mentioned the Cedar and Rose. I know you said that's early. I live on Rose Street.
Yep.
I think I would just love to see or ensure that there's early engagement on, even sort of before the department gets on any of these sort of projects that are going underway, that neighbors are engaged early, as early as possible, before you start spending a lot of time on the money that's going to be spent on these particular projects.
I think we had a neighborhood meeting on Rose Street
did.
before you
Yes,
moved there.
yeah.
We did, and
Yeah.
we're in line with what the neighborhood wants.
Yeah.
And that is certainly part of the traffic calming program. It's very neighbor request driven, and there's a lot of engagement as part of these projects, which is another thing that makes them take a long time. But
Yeah.
very
Yeah,
good.
and sometimes, recognizing that it does take sometimes a couple of years from, I think, that meeting that happened in 2023 to, 2025. Just, some folks may forget, and then I don't want to see folks trying to sort of, again, be the cranky wheel to stall a project when it's moved through this lengthy process just to get there.
It's not quite fully baked yet, so we don't want to go sharing stuff.
No, and that's fine, but again, I think there are a lot of folks who just yearn for early engagement on these types of things.
Once we have something
Certainly.
that's fully
Yeah.
baked, we will be,
Yeah.
and we might be.
I guess not fully baked, though. I guess that's maybe the point that I'm trying to get
You know,
at.
I understand.
Yeah.
Once we have something that we know that we can do.
Yep.
I think that's the
It's
important
feasible.
thing. It's
Yep.
feasible versus the moonshot.
Yep.
Because we don't want to share something that's like, oh, it's not really possible,
Right.
actually. So once we have that, we will probably be bringing something in January to the
Great.
commission to present.
Great. That's it for me. Let's move to anybody has any comments on this particular agenda item? Anybody in the room?
I just had a brief comment about maintenance. Relative to maintenance, I'm Bob Lighty again, and we have locomotion is a wonderful way of having a public-private partnership to do maintenance work and do a lot of this work. I am on the board of Branch Out Burlington that not only does trees in the city, but also like those planters that did traffic calming got graffitied and we painted them. So, there's a lot to be done relative to maintenance with public park. Main Street got incredibly filthy, and personally, my wife and I now clean up Main Street, and we've been doing it for a year, and it's getting better and better. But, anyone want a few thousand cans of beer? There's empty beer cans. There's plenty available.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Rob, anyone online for comment on this particular item?
No one has signed up.
Great. Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Moving on to item 7, the 6-month introductory garage rate.
And are we promoting Jackie? Great, excellent. I will start this off before Jackie's fully on and just say that this was another kind of example of listening with stakeholders and talking to our partners and how our parking facilities can be an agent for change. No one comes downtown just to park in the parking facilities. They are not a destination in and among themselves. They are a vehicle in which to access our great downtown. Activity in our facilities has decreased since COVID, and we are struggling to get back to pre-COVID utilization. So I really want to thank Jackie and the whole parking and traffic team for coming up with this innovative idea, and I'll let Jackie take it from here.
Good evening. So, very short presentation tonight. I think this is an exciting opportunity that we have to help out downtown and helps us as well. So the half price for new businesses, our goal really here is to attract new businesses to downtown while creating better utilization in the parking garage, specifically downtown garage. So the offer here is providing reduced rate parking for new businesses for 6 months. The parking services staff will be responsible for researching business history to make sure that they're new. I've listed the current rates, 84 and 100, and the new rates would be 42 and 50. And just wanted to highlight that there is no restriction on the number of permits that are offered to new businesses. So if they have 100 employees, we would love to offer 100 new permits. This would positively impact budget 265 parking facilities. And then obviously after 6 months, we would hope that these businesses would keep these employees in this program so that they would have permits in the downtown garage, and also, spread the word a little bit about downtown garage and get some more folks parked there. That's it.
You're amazing, Jackie. That was especially concise. We did hear in the earlier in the meeting about the concept of changing the promotion. There's nothing magic to what we're proposing tonight. The good news is the ability to change it is simple. So while the public forum comment asked about a more substantial discount, we recommend trying this proposed program, and if we need to revise it in the future, we'll work with you to revise it.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jackie. Commissioner comments, let's start with Commissioner Davis.
Okay, I need a second here to...
I can also go to somebody else.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Excellent, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Burlingtonian residents, where are you? I love the downtown garage when I park downtown. I really do. And when I remember that my car is parked, instead of walking home without my car, it's even better. But I know to go to the downtown garage. I think this is great. I don't know why, maybe people aren't listening to me, that there aren't more folks parking down there, because it's so convenient. And I'm saying this also as a woman who doesn't I don't love car parks, but you get to the 4th level, I think it's the 4th level, and then you exit out right by Bank Street, and boom, then you're on Church. So does it need more lighting? Are there other things that are, impacting users' experience? I don't know if your parking ambassadors get any information on that. But no, I think this is a great idea. Do you have a target number of how many permits you would hope to get out of this, this campaign?
I think we went to the Church Street Commission with this idea, and I think Carl is supportive, maybe even for landlords or real estate agents who are looking to gather or incentives to get new people in. This could be helpful in that area. I don't think we have a target number. I'm happy to give away $1 million. I would love more. The more, the merrier.
We can keep you posted.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to hear how this rolls out. I guess then a question without, I know you can't reveal too much, but are there new businesses in the pipeline that you and Church Street Marketplace are actually, what's the word I'm looking for? Soliciting, cultivating, courting. Thank you.
At this point, Jackie is working with one existing business who wouldn't qualify for this, but it's still good news for a chunk of spaces. I would say that, downtown is really needing to find the next office tenants, and we're hopeful that this can be an assistant for that. The office market is especially weak these days, and the office market also helps support Church Street and lunch spots and all the other virtuous things. We're trying to play our part to help bring even more activity back to downtown.
Great.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no. You can say great for me too, Chris.
I was agreeing. I appreciated it.
It's the end of the year, folks. That's it. I'm all
Excellent.
set.
Commissioner Davis, do you?
Yep, okay, I think I'm good to go. So, why, well, let me back up. So this project to me begs a few questions. So one being, if the goal was overall to have more activity downtown, I understand why targeting new businesses makes sense from the perspective that therefore there must be new employees unless they're like moving from one business to another. That's the new one. But why only target new businesses and not make it a more general plan, I guess is my first question.
We offer the free employee discount program right now. So many of the businesses that are already downtown are utilizing that and receiving free parking for their employees. So that's just a way for them to get employees in. I think this is just a different strategy to help get some new business downtown, because there are some, some businesses are leaving. So this is just something, just an option to get new people there.
Looking at the residential market, in our mind, the residential market is stronger than the office and retail market. And people who are living downtown usually are parking longer-term residential customers. And we feel our prices are reasonable and under market overall for $100 for a 7-day pass in the garages. So I'm generally comfortable with trying to work on this sector that needs strengthening. We can always broaden it in the future.
Thanks for that answer. Is there information that's available on the vacancy rate of the downtown garage at different times of day? Or I guess both garages, or is this only the downtown one?
Jackie, you want to handle that?
This incentive is only for the downtown garage. There is a large vacancy, especially when the high school is not there. I do have those numbers that I can send over to you. So I think that's where we're targeting. The free employee program is only in the downtown garage because of the space availability. I think we want to get more people down. We want to get people to go there. Today, for instance, Marketplace Garage filled up. Downtown Garage there's so many spaces that are available. It's a much larger space. So that's why we kind of target this area.
Okay. I think there might be room to, beyond this initiative, explore other avenues or kind of pricing in general. Initially my concern was, is this actually going to crowd out customers? I do acknowledge that employees can be customers of other businesses, but would it crowd out non-workers? But it sounds like that is not at all the case, so I feel better about that.
Yeah. The garage has, I think, 1,150 spaces. We're currently around 50% occupancy, so any day there's 400, 500, 600 spaces available.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
What was the number you said, Chapin? About
1,100.
No, open or used.
500.
Yes, Jackie, am I in the ballpark? We're currently around 50% occupancy in that garage.
50 to 60, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I will celebrate the day that we are full in the downtown garage.
Everyone's going to listen to this tonight and just be like, we heard Peggy.
The eclipse?
We're going to get the...
No, another eclipse?
All right.
The eclipse, it was very full. all the way full for the Eclipse.
100%?
Yes.
Excellent.
Wow.
Then the other thing, kind of more, or similarly about overall pricing, I'm curious about the differential between the 6-day and the 5-day permit. I don't know that it's that important. I don't know how many people take one permit versus the other, or how that works as it is. But I just was curious why that kind of like 16% figure was chosen.
Sure. So the 5 days just a Monday through Friday. So we see more typical business employees doing that permit. Think of a bank or a government worker who's working Monday through Friday. The Monday through Saturday option is people maybe who are residents of Burlington and park there on the weekends, or have a service job where they're working Tuesday through Saturday. We are exploring other options for this, but right now that's what those are just the most popular days that people are working, and then Sundays, of course, are free.
Do you have a sense of how proportionally that's split? Like, of the permits that are purchased, how many are the 5-day versus how many are the 6-day?
I would estimate probably 65% are a 5-day, and the remainder are 6-day.
Okay, thanks. That's all I had. Thanks for your work on this.
Commissioner Barr?
Thanks for your work on this. This is fantastic, and I guess my only comment is that any time we have a chance to try and incentivize folks to use certain areas that are underused, it's a great way to do it. So, kudos to you. Thanks.
Vice Chair Fox?
Yeah, I will second what others have said. This is great. I think, I'm trying to remember what past meeting we had about parking stuff, and we're just talking about creative solutions in terms of parking, and I think that this is a really great example of that. And so it's like, kudos for the idea and for going with it, and also like, clearly, I mean, I know you guys listen to us, but like it's sort of like a nice little, like a small full circle thing. And so I'm eager to see how it turns out. I don't really know why I have this question written down, but I guess I was wondering if there's a cap on the number of these permits that you would want to sell, but it sounds like not, because there's so much space.
Yeah, no cap. Happy to take as many as people want. We didn't cap the number per business either, which we had thought about, but no cap on that.
Oh, I think it was because of the budget impacts section that I wrote that question down, because it says each introductory rate permit will cost the parking facilities fund $252 a day for the 5-day permit and $300 for the 6-day permit. So are we losing money on these technically, or?
So you could say that we're losing money if they were going to purchase them anyway. We would be losing those funds, but this is an incentive to purchase them, and then with the hope that they would stay on and pay the full price after 6 months.
I see. The math is not mathing in my brain right now. Thank you for that explanation. That makes sense, and I think that's all that I have.
On the same vein of the pricing, I guess, as I think others, Sharon mentioned, and I think others have mentioned about maybe looking at a longer time period, I wonder if it could be sort of staggered. So after the 6 months, maybe it's not 50%, it's whatever the next 75, or not, that's the wrong way, 25%. And then for another 6 months, and then after a year, it's the full price, because I think then that also just makes it, the jump isn't as large among that time period after the 6-month period. That was one point. And then the other was, I'm curious if the department has looked at sort of with this program and with this is a little bit of scope creep, but on the employee parking program, I think to your point earlier about you always park on the 4th floor, and others I think also like to park as close as possible to the street level. I'm just curious if there's been any thought around, sort of designating certain floors that are maybe more underutilized for these types of programs, where folks are parking there longer and having visitors to the area be able to maybe park closer to, street level. I know that it sort of comes onto different street levels from this
Or
particular
better
project.
wayfinding within the garage.
Yeah, but I think also just designating certain areas for these programs, and then sort of folks who are paying the full sort of rate, all the visitors, providing that access to closer to street level where folks are going. I don't know if that's something that's been looked at. Because like the hotel has certain spots, right? Like some of the hotel.
Right, on the other side.
On the other side of the parking, on the Cherry Street side?
So this is coming soon, possibly. We just paid off the garage as of, I think, the 4th of December. So the garage is completely paid off. So now we can look to maybe brand some different spaces, which the hotels have asked us to do, or designate to different permits, possibly. Just something that we're looking into at this point, now that we've paid off the mortgage of the garage.
Such a lending instrument that required the full garage be public, so designating spaces was not a policy approach we were able to implement while we had that debt.
Great. I look forward to hearing this in the future.
This is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other commissioner comments? I think so. Rob, anyone online?
Yeah, Fleet and Dexter, you are up in queue.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yep.
Wonderful, thank you.
I think this is a really interesting idea. I've been thinking a lot over it. And a lot of the commissioner comments are great and also good food for thought. So I'm a Burlington resident, Ward 7. I moved here in July. Before that, I was living in Boston. This discussion was happened in Boston a few times too. The Boston Globe Spotlight team actually did a really in-depth dive into congestion in the city, and a big piece of that touched on parking, specifically some of the larger employees providing incentives or discounted rates for parking versus the discounted rates for say like the MBTA. And the differences between that were night and day. So one of the bigger employers that provided free MBTA passes was MIT. And since they started doing that, the amount of workers who started using the T was just it was exponential how many people were doing that versus the Seaport District, which is famous for being a newly gentrified area and lots of big businesses popping up there, and really low T access. There's no subway there. It's just a few buses. It's not a wonderful place, very car-centric area. And there's a lot of biotech companies there, stuff like that. And a lot of them offer free parking. And through that free parking, the number of single occupant cars of just people going to work over there also rose greatly. And so I wonder if I realize this is making it cheaper for businesses to be able to afford parking, not necessarily the businesses providing cheap parking for their employees. That's still a decision that they can make, I would imagine. But I wonder, and I know this is an underused part that we want of the city that we want to make use of, but more use in the garage means more use on the streets surrounding the garage as well. And we have Plan BTV. We have a lot of things that we want to not necessarily incentivize more cars in our downtown area. I think it'd be great if the garage is absorbing some of the street parking nearby, but I don't think that it should be absorbing more car use downtown. And so I'm afraid that this might do that. I would be happy to submit that report from the Spotlight team, as I think that could be directly relevant to this, if anyone's interested. But anyway, thank you for this.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. If I may, thank you so much for that comment. We love when new residents get involved in parking policy and transportation policy. So Clayton, don't be a stranger. I will say that this week we were working with a very large employer in Burlington, trying to move them to GMT's Unlimited Access program. There is no one solution to the transportation system. This is an existing garage in our downtown that is underutilized, both limiting the public benefit of a public asset, but also one that has real need for cost to be sustainable. And so we need to at least get good utilization out of what we already have. We are moving people from on-street into parking facilities. The Great Streets Main Street project will remove parking by about a third on that corridor. Bank and Cherry will also see some impacts with that Great Streets project. So points taken. We're excited to work on all modes, and thanks for your interest.
Thank you.
Anyone else online, Rob?
Sharon Busher, you're up in queue.
Hi, Sharon Busher again. Jackie, you weren't here when I made my comments, and the director referenced that, and so did one of the commissioners, the chair referenced that, I was thinking about why 6 months versus a year. I think I don't want to belabor that, but I was looking to kind of attract and keep the new business employees parking in the garage. And then my other comment had to do with the fact that at the end of whatever time, 6 months or a year, I don't know whether there would be an ability to, if this was an employer that had, a fairly large or a number of employees, if you could negotiate a discount as what was being recommended so that they would remain in the garage. So that I just wanted to state that so you could hear that, Jackie. The second thing that I wanted to comment was when we're talking about people going to the garage, I guess you feel the public is utilizing it. I wanted to state, I don't use the garage anymore. I did about a year and a half ago, but the odor, the lighting, the activity, and just the safety at dusk and later, and the activity around the garage, on the street, in the entrances, getting to the garage, made me not want to utilize that garage. So I wasn't sure, because I haven't used it recently. I don't know if safety has improved. I don't know if the activities around the garage are still a barrier. And so I'm a member of the public, and I have a lot of friends that go to the Flynn, and they don't use the garage. They don't use the garage, and safety is the real factor. In fact, people are making decisions of not coming downtown because of the lack of street parking or alternative parking. And I know that that's not what anyone wants to hear, but that's the reality. And so I guess I want to make sure I understand that the public is utilizing it and you have no concern about public spaces being filled, although I heard that it's about 50% full, so it makes me feel like the public isn't utilizing it either, but I'm not sure about that. But I just wanted to mention those things, the odor and the safety issues and activity around the garage, I feel are barriers to use. And I think that that would translate to employees who may indeed work evenings, who are, I think, I'm a woman, and I'm a small woman, and now I'm an older small woman. So I feel like there are reasons why I choose to try to make it as safe as possible for me and to be smart about my choices. So I'm offering this in hopes to help and to have that be part of the equation for getting the garage full again. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. This is an action item. Looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye for myself, no nays. Motion carries, passes. All the above.
All the above. I beat Jim off the line.
Director's report.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Jackie.
Have a good night, Jackie. So there were a number of large updates in the director's report. I just call attention As we are advancing, this department is advancing 3 potential bonds that the council will consider for inclusion on the town meeting day ballot. There will be a community-wide town hall on January 6th. So if folks after the holidays can start tuning in, it would be great to have your help in spreading the word about this. We'll have a significant web presence that Rob and others are working on, and would welcome your effort to get the word out on that. We will plan to have Division Director Megan Moore back hopefully in January to talk about how we're both working to lower the overall cost of the bonds, as well as some affordability program enhancements to improve ability to pay for all users. There's an update here about 201 Flint Avenue. Just 6 o'clock tonight, immediately before this meeting, I was at the Chittenden Solid Waste Board meeting, where they supported the 30-day extension we were requesting, so that we can have until the end of January to close, as we've been working through some financing options, and in the end are going to have to do an internal intra-fund loan to pay for this property. But this property not only will help us be in compliance with soil management, as we've discussed, but will enable CSWD to have more space at 339 Pine Street to hopefully expand the range of services that they offer at that location. We've talked about the GMT funding and the Burlington assessment in the past. As you see below here, GMT is proposing an 18.2% increase to assessment. We are exploring ways to make that more affordable to Burlington. One potential would be to return what was the College Street Shuttle, Route 11, to fare service. GMT has a much more equitable fare structure now, so a fare-free service on one route may not be as important now as GMT's overall sustainability, so we can have better transit service. We did get the City Council to approve 8-2 on Monday night, moving ahead with the best base technical concept for the bridge and the Colchester-Barrett Riverside intersection. It was a very long meeting, but a lot of good feedback from councilors, and that is a really important step forward. I will be then writing a letter to VTrans outlining all the conditions that Burlington wants to be included into that letter to give VTrans direction for moving forward. And the holiday schedule is below, thanks to Rob for getting folks focused on that, and when recycling will be picked up. Rob, do you have anything else?
We will pick up recycling on January 1st, however.
Oh.
Just correcting
An error in my director's report.
If you happen to live in
That's right.
Wednesday Hill section, maybe, we do pick up recycling on New Year's Day, so that is not one of the 5 days. Just want to clarify that. There'll be, Chapin has had a busy week, we can't fault.
And January 6th is the tree pickup? See that on the website?
January 6th is tree pickup and the citywide town hall. That Chapin mentioned. There'll be a whole host of other things rolling out for the water bonds in the coming weeks, especially after the new year. Chapin mentioned the town hall. We are doing a Channel 17 tour tomorrow at the wastewater treatment plant, coupled with an interview. Chapin just yesterday himself did a mayor's show on the bonds themselves. We would hope for you to be able to visit the town hall in person. There'll be a forum followed by kind of visiting individual tables. There will be a whole host of Front Porch Forum and social media after the new year that we'll be ramping up on the water side of the wastewater and water side of these bonds. And then there will be another round of NPA tours. We've completed our first round. We'll be going probably in conjunction, or hopefully in conjunction, with the capital side. And as Chapin mentioned, they're working on a website now that we're going to try to mesh between the two of ours, and a lot more coming out if you notice any gaps or think you or your neighbors and friends need more information in a different capacity. Don't be shy and let us know if there's other things we need to be doing.
Great. Thank you. Any questions on director report items?
I guess I have one really quick one on the bonds. So it's going to be 3 separate items that people have to vote on.
Correct.
I think one of the last times Megan was here, we were still figuring out if it was going to be broken up because it makes our job of persuasion that much, or not persuasion, but like making sure voters are filling out ballots correctly, that, you know, we hope you will vote for all 3 of these things.
It's a great point, and that is
Yeah.
something that the CT office is focusing on right now with kind of their plain language outreach
Okay.
for the community on the bonds. And I think Division Director Moyer was landing in a solid place in terms of being able to request what she needs on her side into 2 separate bonds, whereas there may have been an open question about wastewater, stormwater. Those are likely to be combined.
Okay.
That third bond Chapin's mentioning is the capital bond, roughly $20-ish million. That would be the third bond, and the newest that's kind of in the public arena for people to digest.
Okay.
That is part of the 3 bond package.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks for the explanation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was
Yeah.
clear on that. Thank you.
Can I ask a question on that? Is it possible to, I don't know if this is desirable, but to break those bonds down into even more separate questions? So the reason I'm asking is because I have a fear that a big number is more likely to be rejected than some number of smaller numbers, which then means at least some of these projects could go forward even if the overall bond is rejected.
Yeah, great feedback, and we've been actively discussing it just this week in talking to the council on Monday. They were asking similar question around, can we phase the wastewater and stormwater bond request? That is the largest one, that is currently around $175 million. And we discussed with the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee last night, Tuesday, how we could see that unfolding. And we are going to come back in January, hopefully with a proposal that will just indicate that approach to you. It still will be a very large number for the wastewater bond to renovate largely main plant and look at the work at East Plant, turning it to a pump station as a second phase. We'll have more information soon, but as it is, I think having 3 bond requests on this ballot, thinking of breaking it further is only going to make our job at educating folks even more difficult. So we're focusing more on trying to slim the request for now as much as we can, while telegraphing very clearly to folks, if we're phasing things, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be another ask in the future. That people need to be prepared to revisit the need in the future fiscal years.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Moving on to commissioner items. Commissioner O'Neill-Vivanco?
Yeah, I mean, my whole, advertisement is, do you want to bring back cholera, diphtheria? This is, like, I say this kind of lightly, and the $200 million is big, and the idea of breaking it down smaller to have an on-ramp, I think is slightly more palatable, but there are major consequences, not just for economic development in our city, but really health as well, if we don't deal with our wastewater. But on another note, a little more. So one comment I have is, I was coming out of Briggs Street by City Market, and I was turning right onto Flynn Avenue, and it was like total rush hour. And the car park across the street from the Howard Center, so there was someone trying to come in. There are probably like 2 car lengths before the traffic light. So traffic light was red, and someone across the way was trying to also turn in. I don't know if that's going to be a problem. Is it? There's my spidey sense tell me something's going on. Because it did seem like, then the cars who were leaving their workplace were backing up there to try to make the left turn to go east on Flynn Avenue.
Right.
Is there another way to get out? I was trying to look at the map.
Yes, there is another driveway that is further west by
Okay.
the railroad tracks.
Okay.
So This was one of the intersections that we worked to try to change as best we could. We did make some modest changes to the intersection. We reduced the crosswalk lengths by reducing the design vehicle for the project. But the geometries fundamentally were unable to be changed due to permits and cost. And our partners maybe tiredness with the city and wanting to get this project completed. So we will monitor. There is a potential that they could implement a one-way in, one-way out circulation. That is one choice. The other is if this continues to be a problem, we can look at, once the parkway is fully complete, modifications at that point.
Okay.
But we are 2 years out from being fully complete. Feel free to pass along observations. It's certainly going to be an area we're watching.
Always.
Could I ask a follow-up on that? Is that the one-way traffic flow, is that something that the city has the ability, I know, it's on private property, but given that it's coming onto the city right away, is that something that because of a safety issue, the city could sort of, I don't want to say mandate, but effectively?
That's a
mandate?
good question. I need to work with the city attorney and our city engineer on. I am not sure if we can regulate the circulation pattern into and out of a private parcel.
Okay.
But certainly encouraging it. And it looks like the cars that park close to the railroad line all go in this way.
Correct.
So it might be one way.
It is.
Okay.
So a one-way in on the eastern driveway and a one-way out on the western driveway would certainly be possible.
It's kind of like a mini version of the Innovation Campus here, but there's a traffic light.
Right.
It
Or
is
multiple traffic lights for multiple.
quite humorous that the two intersections on the Champlain Parkway that have adjacent driveways to the intersections both have U circulation patterns and have very similar challenges with the final design of the project. We are monitoring both and will continue to do so.
And then my final comment is, thank you to staff for everything this past year, but in particular, getting the no turn on red from Union to Main across the finish line. I'm gonna just take a picture when that goes in. I'm so thankful, even though my children have managed to survive that crosswalk, that we really are, as a city, prioritizing the safety of some of our most vulnerable users. So thank you. And I know I was a PIA on that one.
We apologize for it taking so long and your graciousness. Thank you.
That's it.
Excellent. Commissioner Barr?
No comments, actually.
Thankfully. Vice Chair Fox?
Okay, one thing, and maybe, and I've brought this up before, so maybe I need to just see quick fix it, but all of the stop sign items that we voted on reminded me of something I brought up when city engineer Norm Baldwin was still here, which is North Street, and those lower blocks of North Street that don't have stop signs as they approach North Street, like Drew Street, Blodgett, and Pitkin. And his response was, well, the MUTCD does not warrant this, their sight lines are fine, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, if we're talking about some of these others, like residential, low-traffic streets that now are getting stop signs, can we look at North Street for that also?
Rob and I are taking notes, and we will make sure that gets to the technical staff.
And that's all I had.
Excellent. My only comment is just echoing what I think others have said. I think the department has certainly listened to a lot of the things that the commission has been discussing, and I think even tonight's agenda certainly reflected that, I think, heavily throughout all the agenda items. So very much appreciated.
Thank you for that recognition, and it's a good partnership, and look forward to a equally productive 2025. And to that, maybe what we should remind folks is that we did get the commission's annual report to the council on Monday, but
in the consent agenda for the city council packet.
Yeah, actually, sorry, a very quick question on that. Didn't that go out over the summer, and it just got to the city council agenda now?
there was a mix-up in getting it to the council.
Okay.
So our apologies. It did get to them. It was not timely.
Excellent.
Great.
Motion to adjourn.
I did not have a chance.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
Bring up
Commissioner
anything.
I'll
Davis.
tape in mine.
Sorry.
Thanks. So a couple things that all kind of came up in this meeting is the grants not being able to be used for maintenance issue. I'm keeping everything above board, of course. I was curious if it would be possible to bundle projects together in some way to then be able to access different sources of funding. I suspect this is something that has already been thought of, and if it were possible, it would have already been done. But if there were any like dollar thresholds or something that were stopping the maintenance usage, I was curious if there was anything to that.
Yes, we do, on occasion, depending on what the grant eligibility is, bundle a couple projects together. We just applied for an EPA Community Change Grant. We were unsuccessful, but we looked at trying to address the combined sewer overflows in the south end, as well as work with the Intervale Center on improving pedestrian and bike connectivity at the Intervale Center. So we do try to bundle when opportunities exist. There will unlikely be a grant source that wants to pay for maintenance. So.
All right. Yeah, I feared that was the case.
Yeah.
In terms of, I think this was Commissioner O'Neill Blanco's idea about putting parking in between the flow of traffic and a bike lane.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious about more generally, this may be very unpopular, I don't know, of using more one-way streets to facilitate something like that. I think it would likely, I don't know the research on this, but I would think it would improve safety because people only need to be keeping track of the one-way flow of traffic, as well as making things more predictable for everyone, and then the right-of-way issue might become a little bit less severe in that case. So I guess is it sensible? Do people hate it and that's why it's not done, or anything like that?
Burlington does not have a lot of grid connectivity. We have very few streets that actually go through, and as a result, we don't have a lot of options to have effective pairs, adjacent streets that go north and south. Where we do, we've largely already implemented such an approach, and given the lack of connectivity, more one-way streets will add VMT, add traffic, as people will have to travel more to get to their destination. There has been discussions about trying to revert some back to two-way. North Winooski Avenue is a good example where some of the businesses feel like the one-way street is a real hindrance to their full vitality. But yes, as you note, if you turn a street one way, you do have often more space for either more parking or more active transportation uses. So if there are specific places people are interested in looking, let us know. But absent good pairs, when you make one street one way, you're going to send traffic through the neighborhood on the other way.
Gotcha. Yeah. That makes sense. Then I was curious about I guess it would be in I forget what it's called now, but the like handbook thing that talks about traffic patterns and signage and all that. You mentioned it before. MU.
The manual on
MU.
uniform traffic control devices.
Yeah.
It rolls off your tongue, doesn't it?
Yep.
That I referenced so eloquently just minutes ago.
I looked at it briefly today because it was brought up and was
Light reading.
thinking about, well, Control F is very helpful. So I was really, I mentioned it earlier in the meeting, but one thing that has just always really bothered me is when the only information you have about lanes is on the lane itself, because either up here, which is new to me, is the plowing just destroys paint on roads, which makes that more difficult. But also, if a car is already occupying that space, you can't see what it's supposed to be. So to that end, I was curious if that guide or some sort of Burlington specific guide, or I guess maybe at the state level too, I'm not sure, if there was anything that dealt with that concept, if there's like a threshold situation that makes it happen, anything like that.
Yeah, those matching a sign with pavement markings is certainly acceptable, and I would say that if you notice intersections where it is unclear, we just added one in front of Edmonds on South Union to match the markings there. So if there are other intersections, we can certainly proceed. I don't think there is a mandate in MUTCD that an intersection have both a sign and road markings, but there's nothing prohibiting it. So let us know where we should add those.
Okay. Yeah, I figured it wasn't required. Otherwise, I think those would exist in a lot more places. But the Home Avenue one, the right turn onto Shelburne Road, is a big one for me.
We took a note of that during the meeting, and Julia and I just said that we'll follow up on that.
Then on that same intersection, I was curious if it might make sense. I suspect people would hate this, but making it a no right turn on red intersection, because so much of the traffic does want to turn right there, and the way you have to go forward quite a bit before you can actually turn right. The curve is not coterminous with the crosswalk.
Yeah.
So I think that creates a situation where also there's that sign from the laundromat that infuriates me, that is blocking people's view.
Sightlines.
So I think safety and kind of expediency of people at the intersection could be improved by either giving a green-red arrow a green right arrow when it is safe to turn right, because it's not always clear if there are no cars. Sorry, I didn't realize how difficult it is to describe intersections
We've got
verbally.
improvements. We've got a scoping study. It's just been completed. We'll send it to you. We're planning for a different pedestrian phase to limit that conflict.
Okay, great. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, I believe, is with the bond discussion. I talked about this a little bit last time, and I don't think I made very much sense, so I'm going to try to take another crack at it. To clarify for me, to make sure that I understand this correctly, is it true that the improvements that are being made to the water system are improvements that pick a time frame, were identified, and certain aspects of them could have been done over the last, say, 20 years, something like that? Is that the case?
There's certainly many pieces of our infrastructure that have hit the end of their useful life, and some of which were identified previously, the full scale of which on the wastewater side became more known around 2019 when we started doing some recent evaluation and planning work. On the water side, the reservoir is the largest investment on the bond front. The roof has been known to be beyond its useful life. The rubber membrane is blowing off in a number of locations. And the pump station there that is pumping water up to the hospital has pumps that are over 50 years old. So yes, there is some deferred maintenance, and I think I'm very proud of the team that's doing more evaluation and also not trying to fix things with duct tape and bubble gum anymore, but getting the public to make the investments so that there's more reliable service.
Okay, thank you. And to be clear, this is not to, it's the opposite. It's not to malign the staff or the department for not doing this stuff. I know it requires the money to do it. Actually, my issue is on the other side of it, which is that, in my view, this is an intergenerational equity issue, and we are facing this problem because things were not paid for appropriately over time. And so my largest frustration with the current bond situation and reading some of the city council comments and things of that nature is this idea that we should push it off further because it's difficult now is exactly what got us in the spot today, that we're needing to do this now because people pushed it off before. And so while, yes, it's difficult, things are always going to be difficult. And so I guess to make this something that isn't just me talking to no one online, and the public would be, if there's anything I can do to help to talk to city councilors or I would like to be present at that January 6th meeting that you mentioned, but anything like that, I think it's a very important issue, and I know that it's in the hands of the public, so it's not necessarily something that the department can just undertake on its own, but it's very frustrating to me that it seems like a lot of infrastructure we're having the same issue with, and it's happening relatively concurrently, I think, because the life of things that are material tends to be somewhat similar. So all the stuff's wearing out, people don't want to pay for any of it, and then it just gets pushed down the line to future people. So yeah, please let me know if there's anything I can do to help with that.
Excellent. Excellent.
That's
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Well, no motion.
Second?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion, or the meeting concludes at 8:21.
Nice.
Good job. Under 2 hours.
Under 2 hours.